Can you imagine if a construction company tried to build a house in a different way, in a different order every single time? Well, they'd never get anything done, and the house wouldn't even stand half of the time. It's the same thing with your mixes. All right, we both know there are a lot of tutorials out there, a lot of info, a lot of opinion, a lot of tools, a lot of gear, and a lot of plugins, all trying to help you get better sounding records, better mixes, better recordings, all that. There's always new stuff to try, whether it's a technique or a tool or a plugin. And so amateur mixers often make this big mistake, and that's that every single mix looks different. They have what I call sloppy session syndrome, which means that every recording session and every mix session they do looks different. Tracks are all over the place in a different order, different names, different plugins, different setup, and they also have a very weak workflow, which means they're tackling things in a different order every single time they start a mix. Sometimes they start by focusing on the lead vocal and mixing that first. Other times they might start on mixing the kick and snare first, or maybe they just saw a new YouTube video come out, and so this time around they're gonna try mixing all top down or some other new mix technique. Now, learning new things is great, all right? That's why this channel exists, but I need to warn you, without a consistent workflow, you will not have consistent mixes. If you want to have consistent mixes, you need to have a consistent workflow. All right, just imagine an athlete, like a hockey player who's training. Sometimes they go for a run, sometimes they go swimming, they throw in a little bit of basketball. No, this is not how they train, right? They have a specific regimen that they follow that produces a specific outcome. And I want you to bring that mindset into your mixes. So by all means, yes, try new things, but you also need to have some pillars, some things that stay consistent from mix to mix, which brings consistency to your mixes, and you'll get them done faster and you'll get better sounding results. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, doing the same thing every mix, doesn't that just make it into like an assembly line factory? Doesn't that take out all the creativity from your work? Well, no, this is simply not true. You can still be very creative and even try new things, but within a solid framework. Kind of like how you can add a lot of cool finishing touches and new technology inside of a house, but you still want the builder to pour the foundation first. The best creative professionals across all industries, music, art, video, photography, writing, they all have a process. They all have a workflow. They all have habits, and that's what allows them to be creative and extremely productive. All right, so what are those pillars? What are those things that you should keep consistent from mix to mix? Well, if you don't have any already, you can start by stealing mine. And by the way, you'll notice that all 8 of these are very easy. So here we go, 8 things that you can do on every mix. Number 1, have the same track names across every session and put the tracks in the same order. That means for, let's say, a snare drum, well, it's not having some sessions it's called SN, or other ones it's called snare, other ones it's called ST for snare top. It means you're naming it the same thing every single time, and you want to apply that across all the tracks, and you want to line them up from left to right or top to bottom on your screen in the same order every time. That helps you know exactly where to find a track quickly and easily without thinking about it. Number 2, you want to have the same routing from mix to mix. So that means for me, every mix I do, all the drums, they're going into a drum bus. The bass tracks into a bass bus, all the guitars going into a guitar bus, vocals to vocals, etc., and then everything comes out a main mix bus, and that's always the same from mix to mix. And by the way, this second step, the same routing, as long as you do step 1 and have all the same track names, you can accomplish step 2, the same routing, basically in an instant using a template. So we've got same track names, same routing. Number 3 is to have the same workflow. What do I mean by workflow? That means the order that you do things. So I approach every mix the exact same way. I tackle it in the exact same order. Real quick, my workflow is setting up and organizing the mix, then doing a rough mix and balance and panning. Then I do the heavy lifting, which means really digging in, doing all the EQ, compression, all that stuff. Then automation, then any special effects that I want to add. And then finally, it's just finishing the mix, making sure it's all tied up neatly and ready to go out. Those are the steps I follow on every single mix. And by the way, even within that, there's specific order that I do things. For example, in the heavy lifting phase, well, I'm digging into drums first, starting with like kick and snare and going up through the drums. Then I bring in the bass, then I bring in the guitars, the lead guitars, then the vocals, and I'm always tackling the mix in that order. I never reverse it. I never start with any other instrument first except for drums. Always the same. And having that same workflow makes you way more productive and actually even more creative. You start getting better results because you're not thinking about your workflow. You're just operating on autopilot which allows the creative side of your brain to really take over and shine. Number 4, getting into some more technical things here. Something I do on every single mix is parallel drum compression. And my parallel drum compression, bus, and routing, that's all part of my template. So this all gets brought in a moment and it's ready to go. And this helps me add extra punch and impact to the drums on any mix, really across almost any genre. I always use this technique. And you can click this little card here if you want to see a video explaining how to do that well. Number 5, I use the same effects on every single mix. That means the same reverbs, the same delays, the same kind of harmonizer / coarse effects. These again are part of my template. I bring them in, they're always the same. And truth is, look, you do not need to audition a new reverb and a new delay every time you want to add an effect to a track, okay? You want to find your favorite reverbs, your favorite delays, the ones that are extremely useful, that work across a variety of mixes and genres, and you want to have those loaded up, ready to go. So if you want some reverb on a snare, you just need a couple clicks, just create that send it to your snare reverb, and boom, it's there. The plugin's already loaded up, it's already got your favorite settings dialed in, and you don't have to think about it. So find the effects that you like. Chances are you're using like the same ones in pretty much 99% of your mixes anyway. So get conscious of what those are, put it in a template, make it easy and automatic. All right, 3 more to go. Number 6, the 6th thing that I do on every single mix that you should start doing too is micro automation. Now, I'm gonna do a full video on micro automation, but this is where I really bring the mix to life. So this is where I'm riding really almost every fader in the mix, the kick, the snare, the overheads, the bass and guitars, and of course the vocals, riding those faders throughout the song, adding extra impact and really dynamics and making things stand out, tucking things back, and really making the mix breathe and move and pull the listener through the mix. You do not want to skip the automation step. It's something that the pros rely heavily upon, so make sure you're doing automation on every single mix. All right, the last 2 have to do with your final mix bus, your master fader. So number 7 is on every single mix I do, I have an SSL style bus compressor on my mix bus, and it pretty much always has the same settings dialed in. And it just kind of gives that mix a little bit of a boundary while also helping things feel glued and move together. And look, if you use a different style of bus compression every single mix you do, it's gonna be really hard to know how things are gonna react into it. And therefore, it's gonna be really hard to get that consistency that I've been talking about. All right, finally, the 8th thing that I do on every single mix is I put the Slate FGX plugin last in the chain on my mix bus. And I'm not doing much here. It's just really touching it when I'm mixing into it. It's just giving me that final bit of energy and loudness. And then it's especially useful when I need to send the mix off for mix notes or approval to a client. I use that to really kind of crank up the loudness, get it more in the ballpark of a finished mastered record, so that when the client is comparing it to other records, mine doesn't sound too quiet or weak. So FGX helps me get that volume in a really transparent way that doesn't mess up my mix. So super useful plugin that has found itself on every mix that I do. I'm gonna run through these 8 tips really quickly. Again, number 1, use the same track names in the same order on every session. Number 2, use the same routing. Number 3, the same workflow. Number 4, get parallel compression on your drums in every mix. Number 5, use the same effects and have them ready to go every single time. Number 6, do automation on every single mix. Number 7, use the same style of bus compression. I like the SSL style. Finally, Slate FGX, last on the mix bus. Really useful tool for getting my mix where it needs to be to send it off to clients. So feel free to steal any one of these 8 tips or all of them and start doing them in every single one of your mixes. It's about bringing consistency and speed. It's being able to mix faster and better at the same time, and you need to start doing these things that allow you to get that consistency if you want to get out of the sandbox and start taking this seriously. So there you go, some habits to start building into every mix that you do. Now on the flip side, there are some things, some bad habits that you want to make sure you are not doing on any of your mixes. So check out this video here for the top 3 big metal mixing mistakes. All right, see you guys later.